Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hiya, folks.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're happy to have you back here for another installment of movie discussion delight. And yes, dear listener, I know I said that we probably would have a guest this week, but hey, in my defense, I was working, Ryan was working. We're trying to do good things, put good feelings out there in the world. And unfortunately, it just meant that we couldn't get it scheduled until next week. So it's just the two of us. It's just the two of us again. We know you love it just when it's just Ryan and me.
Just the two of us.
Yep. So we're thrilled to be back. I hope you
podcasting delight. That makes us sound like a dessert.
There you go. Put us in a little crystal goblet with a nice spoon.
Eat us after you've had all of your protein for the day.
That's true. Yes. We are a post-meal thing. You know, I think we are the kind of thing that we are we are decadent, we are rich, I think we're sweet. I think we're very sweet. So, all right. So, so thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed our it really kind of was a deep dive into Alan Parker last week. That was really,
well, it wasn't. It was a deep dive into Alan, but none of those movies.
Yeah. None of those movies, but I mean, it was
got the real analytical treatment. They were like little advertisements for his career, but when you put them all together, there's definitely there's definitely depth there, as you say. So
yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys where it's just when you see all of his work together, you know, like just in a list like that, it's like, holy man, that's a murderer's row of films right there. In most cases, it was really great.
His collected works is awesome.
Yeah. So
he operates enough in the service of the story as a filmmaker that even though he certainly has his style and point of view, which I think when you see it all together, you can see it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
He's stealthy enough as a storyteller and as a stylist that one film at a time, you don't feel his presence so much.
Right.
So it was a worthy exercise in that way.
Absolutely.
To go through it. Well, we hesitate to do that with people who are around and still making stuff, but we'll have to do that more because that was fun just to line it all up and talk about it quickly, and I enjoyed that very much. So
and now hear me out, we could start bumping off directors so that we can talk about their films.
I can think of a couple I'd start with.
So today we're gonna hit a bunch more hodgepodge of questions, and we're gonna see where this episode takes us. But first, let's take a gander at what we've been watching this week. What were your last four movies?
Well,
or last four. I shouldn't say just movies. I shouldn't just say movies. Last four big things that you watched.
Oh yeah, I don't watch a lot of TV. Really, these days, that's probably what I should be doing, binging shows like everybody else. But I don't have it. I just don't really have it in me to do that. I don't like not digesting stuff while I'm watching it. So I'm watching things that I've seen before for the most part, but not not completely. We talked about a couple of new things last week. The last 4 movies I watched were White Sands and Freejack, and those came out around the same time, so they got lumped together. They also came out now here all these years later, almost 30 years later, on in high definition on Blu-ray at the same time. So it's felt like kismet to me. So I picked them up.
Nice.
And then I watched, because I don't love either of those. We'll talk about them, I guess, in a second. And then I watched Nell.
Wow.
And The Wings of the Dove. Those are my last 4 movies.
Wow. That's once again, pretty. That's pretty eclectic journey around cinema there.
Not really. The one thing all 4 of those movies have in common is they're 4 movies that none of you will have considered watching in the last
There is
days.
that. There is that.
So I really do love movies.
Yeah.
And I really do try and keep them fresh in my life, and yet I really do. Like everybody, I pine for nostalgia somewhat, and I wish things were different and more like they used to be. And you guys hear me, I try not to wallow in that, but there's, from a storytelling standpoint, I gravitate, to different types. We have all kinds of movies now, so I love new movies too, but there are no new movies coming out this year, which just makes me want to kind of avoid them. So that come the end of the year, when I want to put some sort of new movie marathon together, it can at least kind of feel like it normally does. It will not be the same, but that's where I'm at. That's where I'm coming at all this from. I've got, during the quarantine, I'm not going anywhere. I got no plans at night. When I'm done working in the day, I pop in a movie and I watch. That's what I do. Even if I'm not fully engaging with them, I want to replay some of these things and revisit some of them, and every once in a while, one of them will grab on. And
sure,
White Sands is an interesting movie. It's there's nothing really about it to super recommend it. It's one of those classic 90s thrillers where your hero with some sort of integrity, in this case played by Willem Dafoe, finds a big briefcase full of money and gets, it's either a big briefcase full of money or a big briefcase full of drugs,
right,
or a woman. As a matter of fact, I kind of buried the lead because it's usually a woman. Those other things, happen, and then you could still even get a woman halfway through.
Sometimes it's a baby with drugs.
Occasionally. Yeah, but something that throws your whole life into disorder and throws your routine off, that represents a temptation in some sort of way. And that's what this is. It's a crime story about a big arms deal or whatever, and it's got FBI guys and CIA guys, and it's got criminals pretending to be FBI guys, and you don't know who the real FBI guys are until halfway through. And, it introduces characters to you that it like kills immediately. And it's a dumb thriller, but it's Southwestern, which is fun. It's shot in New Mexico, almost entirely on location in these old hotels and all these, highway locations and things. That's pretty neat. It's got Sam Jackson and Mickey Rourke and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and it's got Fred Dalton Thompson in it. It's always nice to see him in those 90s movies.
Yep.
So, and everybody's doing a good job. It's got James Rebhorn in it and Mimi Rogers. So it's like an adult thriller that's pretty good. And Dafoe, I think he gravitates to, and he's a more natural fit for more off the wall characters. I think he really enjoys playing the straight man in a decent movie, with a decent script. Yeah. And you get that sense from him that he likes being put upon, for a change, instead of being the psycho who comes in and does this or that. and that's fun.
Yeah,
And Mary Elizabeth is great in it. She was
Yeah.
great. As far as Hollywood leading ladies of that era, she's a good one.
So when you put in a movie, when you're watching a movie that is, and no knock on these movies, you know, but otherwise unremarkable films.
Yeah, which
You
this
know,
certainly is. It's
yeah,
not special.
yeah.
It's fine, but
Mhm.
it's not special.
So I mean, so one, is it ever like a struggle for you of like feeling like, oh, I suppose I should give this a watch, or is it like, oh, let's give this a watch and see what happens?
This was with White Sands and Freejack, it was a perfect storm of
It
stuff.
was like, hey, they just came out. I'm gonna get them and take a look at
exactly
them.
when they came out in the winter and spring of 1992, which was not a good time for movies. The number one film of that year was Basic Instinct.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Not of that year, but of that time period
yeah.
that year. It just was, that's when the LA riots happened. And so it was this weird time in history, and the movies are relegated truly to the back burner, but there's a whole bunch of really decent ones. Wind, Thunderheart.
Right.
When you look back at that era, there's this collection of decent films where filmmakers were doing their best. None of these are blockbusters by any means by today's standards, but they were they're not small films, but they were when Hollywood was just smaller in general.
Right.
They were throwing more darts at the dartboard in terms of wide releases in hopes that one of these would come around and be a big hit.
Right.
And the only one that fit that category during that time was Basic Instinct. The rest of them came out and disappeared. I guess you could say maybe Lawnmower Man a little bit. But, it was a weird time, and people were staying home. And filmmakers, Hollywood studios, when LA was on fire for weeks, it was a weird time. It was really strange. And I don't know. That has nothing to do with White Sands or Freejack, but I remember them from that era. I remember the two, I don't remember their names, but I remember the two folks, a guy and a girl who wrote for our high school newspaper, which both you and I wrote movie reviews for ultimately at one point. They were really fun. They were these cool, hard to explain, but they were these cool friends. There's this girl who really liked Mickey Rourke from when she was younger, and this guy who was just joking and whatever. And they were like a fun, great team, I thought.
Oh yeah, in our college paper.
In our college paper.
Yeah, Dan and Kate. Yeah, I'm still
okay.
Yeah.
You remember them?
They
were
yeah.
neat. They were fun to read because every movie they went to was this adventure that they laid out in the thing. It was, we went, and they talk about like every aspect of going together and their interactions together, and that was fun. It was really fun for me, and they saw both of these movies during that era. And he really thought White Sands was dull as doornails and boring, and she just because Mickey Rourke was in it, she thought it was absolutely awesome.
Right.
And I thought that was funny because that's not, Mickey Rourke's good in it. He's good in everything, but he alone, especially as a supporting player, doesn't make a film. But White Sands is good. If you miss that sort of movie, Pacific Heights comes to mind. There were so many of them.
Yeah.
Deceived, Malice. The early 90s version of late 60s like interpersonal thrillers, that was movies then, and so that's fun. White Sands wasn't even one of the better ones, but when you watch it now, it's got everything you want. It's got a smartly told script. It's a project that started with a script. That alone is significant, right?
Sure.
It had to have it all there, the twists and turns, the characters. They couldn't just say, oh, we'll put Willem Dafoe in a thing about this, and then we'll just build some sort of film project around him. Like it contains nobody that they're that they would do that for,
It wasn't tentatively, like, the working title was Willem Dafoe Briefcase Project.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It was some writer wrote that thing out. He wanted to write a Southwestern noir sort of mystery suspense film. These all basically stem from Hitchcock, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of like 90 it's them trying to, or sort of recapture or modernize a noir genre.
Right. And there were tons of those, and they're hardly any bad ones. When a regular mystery suspense movie comes out these days, if it's not great, it's 100% rotten.
Right.
Like a movie like this is a sidetrack before we get to Freejack, but there was a movie with Harrison Ford and Gary Oldman in it, and the two of them said yes to this movie just to do another movie together because they had a lot of fun doing Air Force One together. So that's really the only reason this movie exists. It doesn't star either of them. They're battling business guys of some kind, I don't know. And it stars Liam Hemsworth as some young guy who is being used. Basically, he's a tool between these two guys' little feud against each other, and he eventually gets the upper hand on both of them. And it's called, I can't remember what it's called.
Is that Paranoia?
Paranoia.
Paranoia, yeah.
It comes complete with the completely generic, could mean anything title.
Yes.
That movie isn't good. I agree with 100% of critics in this case, but it's on a 100 scale, it's like a 41.
Sure.
It's not garbage either. It's competently done. The acting is decent. The script has a couple twists and turns in it. It's like you're not watching some incompetent piece of garbage when you're watching it. So it's 0. Rotten Tomatoes score is extremely misleading. All that shows
7. It's got a 7.
Well, either way, all that shows is agreement between critics.
Right.
That doesn't represent the quality on a 100 scale of the film itself at all. And when you read the reviews, you get that sense. They're all like, "What? Whatever. It's kind of dull. What's the point of this?"
Yeah, just glancing at it, it says it was knocked for being cliche and unoriginal. Okay, well, yeah, that's a story. The story was cliche and unoriginal, but I bet it was still I bet it was still executed, pretty, like you said, competently
enough. Yeah, exactly. So that's not a movie we're all out to see, unless you're a big fan of any of those people, or or you're really, really bored.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the perfect demonstration of how broken and how stupid Rotten Tomatoes is, because that film's 7 is ridiculous. It's nowhere near a 7 out of 100, nowhere close.
Sure.
So, and if it really were a 7, the odd thing is it might even be more entertaining. Like that movie could have used a bit more stupidity, or who knows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have existed. Again, I don't think it would have drawn in the actors of the caliber that they got had it been garbage on the page. But in the end, that might have, if it were more campy and more dumb, it might have made it more fun.
Sure.
But Rotten Tomatoes is just stupid. If you're not going to take time to read what a critic has to say, then reading what all the critics combined score out of 100 is beyond worthless. It's even deliberately misleading.
Well, and it's deliberately misleading both ways.
Right.
I mean, so even if, because that's a big thing now. This movie, it's
who's going to have the
fresh.
balls to give something like Interstellar a bad review?
Right.
Because you wouldn't. But is everybody going to love it? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. But in the advertisements, they can say it's certified fresh, 97%. And it just, all that means is that
nothing.
All that means is that, the critics all seem to sort of say the same thing.
Agree that it was good.
Agree that it was, it was good.
It's this or this. And that's, we know why that's iconic, but this or this used to come with a discussion and maybe even a debate out in Radio Land. I'm holding thumbs up and thumbs
Yeah.
down.
Well, yeah.
But,
I mean,
but
even
just to score the thing, just to slap approved or disapproved and move on that's such a
sure. Well, even Netflix now. Remember they used on your menu. They used to have
5 stars
stars,
or
5
4
stars, and
stars.
you could rank it on fives. Now it's just thumbs up, thumbs down.
That's it. Did you like it? Did you not like
Not
it?
like it, and you're like, I don't know, it's fine. Well, then
I
what you
rate
got to
stuff
choose.
that I liked, and I rate stuff that I don't like. But anything in between that I'm a little bit hesitant about, I just leave the rating off on Netflix.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes movies are 41s or 56s, and it's like, are you really gonna put the same rating on White Sands because it's better than average as you do on The Godfather Part 2?
Yeah, I mean you
need to have more room to roam and critical rankings.
Yeah. And that's and maybe that's our PSA. Maybe that's our PSA for Netflix users is, and unless if you're watching something and you feel, lukewarm about it, you have to ask yourself, do I want to see more recommendations based on something like this? Because that's all you click thumbs up, thumbs down.
Telling it.
You're like, okay, well, they liked,
Umbrella Academy,
so I want to see more things like Umbrella Academy come up in my recommended for you thing.
Right. Or did you kind of enjoy it, but you don't really want to watch another show like that?
Yeah. Then maybe give it a thumbs down so you don't see it. Yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing, though. I mean, because if you leave it blank, if you leave it, you just got to say, do I want to see more like that? Well, if you don't really, if it's like, well, I kind of do, or I'd see something like this again. Well, then just leave it. Don't touch anything on it.
Which makes it not useful.
Yeah, which makes it not useful
because
it's
Netflix
also difficult.
Knows what you're watching.
And
it's following that, and it knows what shows you've given up on and which ones you watch to the end. And so it doesn't need those rankings.
Mm-hmm. All it does for someone like me when I get if I get fast food and my drink of Coke comes out, I have to push in all the little buttons on the top because I need to. Mm-hmm. It makes it very difficult for me to be on my menu of a show or a movie that I've watched and not click on one of those rating things, because I just feel like, okay, I need to click. I need to have something here.
I understand that.
A little touch of OCD in my movie watching, I guess, but anyway, so again, kind of going back a bit. Well, we'll talk about Freejack here, but I'm fascinated by this idea of just watching unremarkable films. So when you watch them, are you just?
It's more than that. I own White Sands and Freejack forever now.
Yeah, that's true.
I've added them to the library. They're part of my movie history, and this is probably my third time watching either of them. I think I probably watched them once each on DVD as well.
Sure. Okay. So when you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch White Sands, or I'm gonna watch Nell, or I'm gonna watch Freejack. You put it in. Is there a feeling you have when you're like, I'm gonna watch? Like, are you and maybe it's different every single time you put it in, and that's obviously totally cool too. But is it like, I'm gonna watch? I want to watch and see. Are you looking to be surprised by something? Or are you just sort of let it wash over you until something hooks on you?
I'm not very spontaneous. I planned to watch these out about 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
I had to plan to watch them and buy them and have them have enough time to get here.
Okay.
And Freejack just barely made it here because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But it did, so I didn't have to change my schedule.
And you popped it in as a.
So I planned on watching them. The whole thing has a plan to it, and then. And that's because this week I'm watching Alien 3 and Nell and movies that are actually quite good in one way or another, or more significant, I will just say, than those. So I just wanted to put them with each other. I have them in my catalog because I've had them on DVD all this time. I had both of those movies on VHS. So they were once Sony bought the Morgan Creek catalog, and once Sony started releasing Morgan Creek films, all these started lighting up on my want list as you can replace your DVD with this now. And these have been out for a while and got tucked away in for a rainy day. And it didn't rain, but I don't know how interesting any of this is.
Well, no, to me, it's fascinating because you are someone that not only is a great consumer of film content, you are a great consumer of the physical thing, and that a great deal of thought goes into the massive amount of films that
I try and stay
watch,
disciplined and not buy reissues of movies that I'm not going to watch.
Sure.
Even if there's some other reason for me to do it, I try and buy them when they get scheduled to watch. That's how I started converting all these DVDs to Blu-rays in the first place. Right. Because at the time it was like, there were so many and I wanted to replace them all and they all looked better for the most part. And you know what I mean? But that was overwhelming. I'm way too poor to just go out and,
and just say, here's 10 more Blu-rays to replace.
Because we're talking, because we're talking about thousands of films. So, but slowly over time, by justifying that as I'm going to watch this and I'm only going to, buy this or that, or, that's how I started into one more format change,
Yeah.
And so I still sort of stick with that in principle, not completely, but
sure,
that's the idea.
Or
you let the value drive you or whatever.
Yep.
They have sales and flash sales and stuff where you can pick up a bunch of $20 catalog titles for $11 a piece, and there's all these little tricks that get our attention. But I'm happy to have those movies. I don't want to sell them short or be like, the dream is, boy, one day, I don't know. Like, the reality is nothing may change and it may be another 20 years before I watch Freejack again.
Right.
But the dream is, hey, they'll all be on the shelf. Someday it'll be spontaneous. I'll have a girlfriend or a wife or something, and they'll be like, ooh, what do we watch tonight? And I'll be like, who knows? I don't know.
Or you'll have a conversation and something you like, and you mentioned, somebody will mention something and you'll go, oh, well, like in White Sands. And they'll go, well, I don't know White Sands. And you'll go, ha.
That conversation would never happen. But it could happen.
I want to live in a world where that conversation happens.
And more importantly, I'll be prepared when that conversation
and you will be
does
prepared.
happen.
Yes, you will.
Because we talked about it way back, but when Alan Rickman died, all our theater friends really wanted to watch Truly Madly Deeply. And nobody was streaming it and nobody had it. And the DVD costs $140. And the world wasn't ready for that to happen. And because it wasn't, you're all just stuck. You just don't get to do that thing that you really thought you wanted to do. And I didn't, because just last week we were praising Alan Parker because he died. That's why we were going all this time without talking about his movies, and we could have at any time. So I don't want to say that I'm above that sort of thing, but I don't want to just watch Robin Williams films on repeat the day after he died. Not only am I not motivated to do that, but I find it almost distasteful in a way. So I resist that sort of thing.
I apologize if I've asked you this before, or
I had Truly Madly Deeply on the shelf and could have watched it. And if you were my friend, you could have watched it with me.
Sure you go. Is there a holy grail for you of a movie that you either had on VHS, or maybe you came out on DVD, but that isn't available on Blu-ray? Like
we've talked about it. It's The Abyss.
That's right. Okay, I was going to say, I think we did talk about this.
Films, and it's not. It's
because Cameron doesn't care. Cameron's like,
it had a DVD release that was only the Laserdisc content ported over directly. Yeah. It doesn't even have an anamorphic DVD release that fills your screen. It's black bars you on all sides, and it's absurd that film wasn't released.
Yeah,
and people were talking like, well, now I don't want to get into that because I swear to God, me just talking about The Abyss on home video could be an entire show. But that's the big one.
Yeah.
But there's other movies too. Panic Room isn't out on Blu-ray and never has had.
Oh, wow.
There's a whole Anna and the King. That was $120 million epic. That's never been out on Blu-ray anywhere in the world. It's weird. We talked about in our horror sequences, we talked about The Keep. I would really love for them to take that film and transfer it properly and put it out in high definition. I would go bonkers for that, but I don't think there's an audience to truly justify it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But oddly, it's the filmmaker himself getting in the way of that happening, because horror films get released at a much more rapid clip than regular big Hollywood films do,
mm-hmm.
because horror movie fans still collect home video. And that's a key difference. So some movie you've never heard of, some stupid slasher, somebody gets decapitated and their head gets left inside an aquarium film from the 80s. There were many.
Yes.
Has a better shot at getting one of these boutique companies to do a 2K master of it and re-put it out on video with a slip cover with new artwork, and everyone who worked on that movie comes out of the woodwork and does interviews and stuff. Whereas with Panic Room, there's already a lot of content developed at the time for Panic Room, so somebody should release it. Sony in this case. But that, that was a big Hollywood movie that wasn't super successful, but it is sort of well remembered. Blah blah blah. It's not. It doesn't fit. There's nobody out there who's passionate about it, and that's why it lingers.
Yeah.
So it's weird. So there's a bunch, and someday we'll bring back the video. It's what you want to watch thing, and we could do a whole show on things that should be released that aren't. But even that conversation, Joel, it feels stupid. It's not, has nothing. You can go stream Panic Room. So what do you need a Blu-ray for?
Right.
Why?
Well,
it's almost like that conversation has seen its day. That conversation is 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter to most folks anymore. But to me, a film like that sticks out like a sore thumb.
Sure.
Especially when you see such weird glock be put out, and you're just like, wow. But we're all like broken records.
Sure.
We're getting this and not Panic Room,
Yeah.
But
all right. So Nell, how does Nell hold up?
Nell's pretty great, because
I like Nell. I liked Nell a lot when it came out. I remember.
But how does it hold up is a valid question, because it really is of its time.
Mm-hmm.
It's what feels like a fable, except it's just told in this hyper realistic sort of way. And it was already such a strange, weird thing that was so easy to make fun of at the time, so that it suffered from that. But Nell is based on a play I bet you the play is really special, because
I didn't even know that. I thought it was just based on a book.
It's based on a play.
Oh.
And if you think about it, other than the few location things they did in North Carolina, it really is a play. It's you got the houseboat and the cabin, and that's all the movie really is. And it's the play, I believe, is really only those three characters, and the playwright helped develop it for film. So the heart of his play is still there. His weird language that he creates for her, and that weird triangular relationship that causes all this drama and upheaval in each of the main characters' lives. Watching Liam Neeson and Natasha Richardson together is distracting to the point of being almost depressing when you're watching it, because they were so in love in real life, and her death was so absolutely devastating to him. And when I watch it, it's hard to see them together on screen. It's not hard to see them in their own projects that they weren't together in, but their little, bickery sort of will they or won't they, of course they will, relationship in that movie is tough. because you really feel like, and like you notice in some of these films, you really feel like you're watching them fall in love with each other for real. And the tragedy of what happened there, she died of a post-concussion symptoms due to a skiing accident. Their whole family was on vacation. She just took a nap and didn't wake up. And it just, every time I think of that, I just feel horrible inside.
Yeah.
I don't know why. So there's some Hollywood stars that you don't hear enough about to really relate to the bad things in their life. We all go through stuff like this, but that story was so public, and he felt so pointless, and it's so like horribly real tragedy to suffer. And she's just such a lively, alive person, and he's such a guy who, when you hear him talk about it, knew what he had. And what have we seen from Liam since she died? Did he retreat and become depressed? No. What he does is he does 6 movies a year. He has not stopped working since she went away.
And all like these really, for the most part, super intense, actiony.
Or whatever. He does.
He did Love Actually and all these, some of these other things.
The Watergate film. So he does everything. The point isn't so much what movies does he choose. The point is he's a man who he's going to do a movie next. He's going to keep busy. He's not going on any vacations. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's part of his recovery, clearly. It's not my place to say that or guess that, but he was a guy who was like, for a while there was this prize that your movie got, because he was like Daniel Day-Lewis. He'd do 1 movie a year, or maybe 2 if it was really the right thing. Yeah. But he had a life, and he's still got kids and stuff, but I'm sure he has a life, but it's not the same. And it's not just that he's older and that they're not giving him all the superstar roles anymore. He just wants to keep busy, bury himself in his work, and it makes me sad.
Yeah.
So Nell has this whole extra thing on it that is weird when you're watching it. But it's really good. It was a really good script. It's a credible performance by everyone, but Jodie Foster in particular is playing this kind of thing that isn't in any other movie. She's just this. I'm sure that's why she was drawn to it. It's this unique, fascinating thing. There were only a couple of actors really around who could have done it. Maybe Holly Hunter could have done it, or but it, you really feel like this special, and it exists because of this, because it drew these people to it. And it's directed by Michael Apted, who's a fantastic director, very Alan Parker-like guy. And he does that thing where he manages to capture the beauty of rural North Carolina and the dreamlike state of Nell's reality, alternate reality or whatever. And he also manages to keep the camera unintrusive when it's just people arguing about philosophy, or people having these primal interactions with each other. I didn't really say what Nell is. For those of you, everybody must know, but if you don't know, it's this woman. She's kind of 29-year-old, 32-year-old woman is discovered in this cabin in the woods in North Carolina. Her mother has just died, and she's never interacted with another person really in her life. And suddenly, all the systems that come into place and are pulling her in all these different directions, and she doesn't even speak the way we do.
Yeah, she speaks a language essentially developed by her and her mother.
And her mother was a stroke victim and could only talk out of one side of her face. Yeah. So her language is based on that. It's based on a bunch of other things which we won't spoil. Right. I thought you were about to spoil it, so I said
no.
You weren't, though. Why? That would be a horrible spoiler, by the way. Even though it's not what the whole movie is, really, it's still, you get what I'm saying. There's surprises in it. It's neat. Trying to decode the Nell character through her language and her interactions and her beliefs is fascinating, and all that still holds up. But it is a little, it's a little, I don't know. It's all a little symbolic and a little like that. Yeah. That does feel a little put upon, but I hated when people would make fun. That was a movie where all you had to do was quote it and everyone could giggle about it because it's so weird.
Yeah.
And it annoyed me. I always felt like you watched that whole movie and you missed the whole point.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was depressing. I'm like, how can you?
It became a touchstone. Yeah. It became a touchstone for just like it was very, it's like if you want to make a joke about the early 90s, like if you say Tay in the Wind, you're gonna like, oh yeah, 94 or 95, it's mid 90s, that's just something that became like a touchstone.
It was a big successful movie, even though it's kind of a small movie. Again, it fits with the rest of these. You skipped Freejack, by the way.
Sorry, yes, Freejack.
We're gonna do the whole show on these 4 movies. Was that the plan?
Well, no, I have more questions, but
you just didn't know what you were getting into. This isn't a
yeah. I mean, this is a kind of a. I mean, this is a unique foursome of movies that you. At least to me it is. At least to me it is.
Freejack's a Philip K. Dick-esque story. It's not a Philip K. Dick story. The book even has a Philip K. Dick title, which is called Immortality Incorporated, which Dick would be proud of. That's total what he would call something. And of course, in true Hollywood fashion, his title would be too literary, and so they would have to change it to something catchy and quick, like Freejack. Freejack's pretty bad, but fans of bad science fiction films should check it out because it also does a couple of things that movies they're just too frightened and too pathetic to do, which it lets its audience, it leaves them in the dark for a long time, and it honors their ability to wait until things reveal themselves to you instead of explaining everything to you every time something happens, which even the best movies today are terrible. They just explain everything in the most stupid, explainy kind of way imaginable. I'm having a hard time thinking of a modern film that doesn't do that. Right. So watching Freejack was just from a plot mechanics standpoint was fun because it's weird and you don't know what's going on. And it's sort of a weird time travel, sort of cyberpunk kind of, it just has got all these interesting science fiction ideas in it, even though it stars Emilio Estevez and the bad guy is Mick Jagger, who's terrible in it. I remember Mick Jagger's first line, and I waited for it on the edge of my seat. His first line is, "Okay, let's do it." And I remember that vividly from the first time I saw it, because you see him before you hear him, and then and then it kind of, the camera kind of comes to a halt on him, and that's the big start line. Of course, Mick Jagger's he's not as bad as any bad actor in a bad movie. Yeah. But his presence is notable because he's a guy who could have done all these movies, and he did a couple, but he hadn't done any forever, and he picked this one for, like, what are you doing? And then when it finally came time for him to speak, and he knew damn well what his first line was, he just does his first line 110%, and it's exactly the wrong thing to do from an acting perspective.
Yeah.
If you're in a PG-13 movie and you're the only one who gets to drop the F-bomb, you just have to nail it. You have to completely do it. Yep. And that isn't the right thing. I'm sorry, but that's not how you do that. You need to treat that like it's anything else, and you need to make it work in context just like you do everything else. You have to do the work of an actor. And Mick throughout is doing the work of a rock star. He's not doing the work of an actor. He just isn't. But that's not to say he's not a powerful screen presence, or his personality.
There's a reason why he's one of the biggest rock stars that ever walked the planet. Yeah. Exactly.
He brings something to that movie, even if it's not good acting, that you can't deny. So I don't want to rip on him too much. Rene Russo's great in it. Why are you in this? I always say that. When I saw Rebecca Ferguson in Hercules, I was like, what are you doing here? Yeah. What are you doing here? And the answer is, you're a woman. This was the best thing that they gave you to do.
Right.
And you had to choose literally the lesser of 5 evils to decide what your next project was. Whereas Mick Jagger, he just wait around till something that tickled his fancy came around. And
probably was that first line. Probably was that. He's like, probably read the first line and went, "I'll do it. Sign me up.
Do it.
Do it."
Who knows? Anthony Hopkins is also in it. Famously, it's Anthony Hopkins' first film after Silence of the Lambs. So he didn't know he wasn't, when he was doing Freejack, he didn't know he was an Oscar-winning actor, close to the town.
Sometimes when I'm looking up, when I'm looking for inspiration for some of these questions and stuff, and I'll be on Twitter or I'll be on some message boards or whatever, and I'll look and people will be like the one I just saw was like, what Halle Berry, I can't believe Halle Berry did Catwoman after winning the Academy Award, and I'm like, well, she didn't, she did Catwoman before she knew she was an Academy Award winner.
She was still a big star who should have been able to read Catwoman and know it was terrible.
Sure, but what I'm saying, it's like people are like, well, why was that? I can't believe that was their next movie.
Why did she get naked in Swordfish would be a better question.
Sure, yeah.
Because she had no reason to do that.
Yeah.
And didn't want to do it and did it anyway because they gave her a lot of money, which is weird.
Yeah. But
Halle Berry's not a very good actor. She's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, that just happened to be the thing that I saw. But I see that a lot of like, why? I can't believe that so-and-so's first movie after they won the Academy Award was that. And it's like, well, they didn't know they were an Academy Award winner when they made that film.
Leonardo DiCaprio's first movie after Titanic was Man in the Iron Mask, which isn't a bad movie.
No.
But he wasn't into it, and you can kind of tell. And it's a weird, when you watch it, it's weird. You're the biggest actor on the planet, but before Titanic, he didn't know he was going to be the biggest actor on the planet.
Right.
A matter of fact, he was resisting big movies. If you watch what he was doing between Growing Pains and Titanic, it's all this quirky, goofy little things.
Yeah.
But yeah, actors sometimes they just make a bad decision, or they just.
Well, yeah, you go with.
Sometimes, like it probably was here for Renee, is the best decision you could made, and it's just circumstances. You're just stuck.
Yeah.
At least she's Emilio Estevez's squeeze in it. This was before she became I'm still decades younger than you, but I appear old enough to be the 55-year-old guy's girlfriend.
Right.
Films of which she did all of them
yeah.
before she retired and was dragged out of retirement to do the Thor movies. Renee Russo's a good one. She's good. She's not Halle Berry. She's a really good actor. It doesn't help or benefit Freejack in any way that she is, but she's really great. So for somebody who was a model turned actor in particular, it's really, really impressive how good an actor she became. Maybe that's my proclivity. She's an old-fashioned. Who's the actor she reminds me of? Not physically, but just her style of acting is like. She was married to Humphrey Bogart for a while, and she's really, really good. I can't remember her name. She was throwing shade at the Twilight films before she died. She was awesome.
Let's see.
Can't remember her name. She's a good actor. That Renee reminds me of her. She's a throwback to this sassy.
Yeah, Lauren Bacall. Yeah, Lauren Bacall.
Thank you. Lauren Bacall. Exactly who I'm thinking of.
Should have. Yeah. Have I ever told you my Lauren Bacall story?
Let's do it. All right. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Jennifer and I, when we first moved to New York City, Jen had a friend, or I think it was a former student of Jen's mom's, worked for Ted Kennedy. Worked in Ted Kennedy's office, and he calls us up and he goes, "Hey, I know you guys just moved here, but do you want to come to Ted Kennedy's birthday party?" And we're like, "Yeah, we do." And so I probably made mention to this before. This is where we got to meet Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So then after he invites us, he goes, "Okay, well, here's the deal. Technically, you have to work the birthday." Because it is all you're going to do is you're going to stand outside this room for like 15 minutes and make sure people the non-celebs dump their their donation envelopes in or get their name tags and all that. Jennifer and I got put on name tag duty, which is why we got
a bad gig.
No, which is why we got a great story like Tom Hanks coming up and going, "Hey, can I get my wife's name tag? She has a different last name than me, though. Is that cool?" And we're like, "Yeah, I think that's probably fine." But somebody
we are familiar with your wife's last name.
Yes, indeed. But so we're sitting there, and in a big flurry, a big hubbub comes in, and it's Lauren Bacall comes in there and just looking just like old Hollywood, just stunning. And she comes in and she's by herself, and clearly somebody from Ted Kennedy's office. He's like, and she's like, "Oh, Miss Bacall, if you want to come over here to get your name tag, please." And she just like stops, and she's like, "I am not wearing a name tag." Whoosh, and it was like and just like this whole wind, like it kind of like flowed into the ballroom and stuff. And
old school.
Yeah, and Jennifer and I were just like, yes, we saw that. That happened. That was awesome.
That was worth the price of admission.
Yes, completely worth the price.
She's great. She said she has this quote. I don't know what they were interviewing her for. She was old. She wasn't acting anymore. You know? But she was like, "Yeah, my granddaughter came in. And she's like, 'Hey, Grandma, do you want to watch this movie with us?' And they're like, 'Oh, what is it?' And she's like, 'It's the best vampire movie ever.' And she's like, okay, that sounds pretty good." So she sits down to watch. Apparently, it's Twilight, the first Twilight film. And she's like, I wanted to slap my granddaughter on the back of the head. Have you never seen it? She starts rattling off, Nosferatu, and all these kids these days. It was really, really funny.
That's awesome.
But it was the cutest part of the story was okay, really? That sounds...
Yeah, sure.
Her initial take on it was, best vampire movie. That sounds cool. Like an 89-year-old Lauren Bacall reacting like that is a fun thing for me to think about. And her slowly realizing she's watching Twilight. It's a funny idea too.
Love it.
Anyway, Freejack, everything works out in the end. Spoiler alert.
So Freejack, Nell, White Sands. What was the fourth one?
Wings of the Dove.
Wings of the Dove, right. See,
wow, that movie's still really, really good. That movie rips you to pieces. It's a really, really good film.
I have not seen
best of these four.
Yeah.
Linus Roche and Helena Bonham Carter play a couple who are very much in love in London, and she's rich and he isn't, and her uncle or whoever is in charge of family decisions won't allow a marriage between them, and she can't really marry and have them have nothing, so they concoct this weird plan. It doesn't happen all at once, but they're in Italy during it's not Carnival, but it's whatever that big festival that happens in Italy is, where they all wear masks and stuff, and it's like a big party. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But they're down there in Venice, I believe, is where it takes place. I'm not up on this stuff. There's no gondolas or anything cliched like that in the film, but they meet this young, super rich heiress played by the super underrated and always miraculously awesome Allison Elliott. And just really an actor who Hollywood passed by for, I don't know why, because everything she touched for a handful of movies there was awesome. Maybe it just wasn't very lucrative. But she's sick of something. She's dying. And they hatched this plan that Linus will seduce her and marry, get the money, and then they can live happily ever after. The fourth person in this, played by Elizabeth McGovern, is Allison Elliott's character's traveling friend, kind of servant slash sisters. She's her servant, but they're best friends basically in this context. And that's four really, really good performers playing this really emotionally complex stuff. Because however simple that plan seems, and it's pretty clear somewhere into it that Elliot's character understands exactly what's happening and is like, whatever, this is probably the best I can do at the end of my life. but the havoc that it wreaks on their love for each other and the guilt, and it's just so complicated. Obviously, it's based on a really good book. You're looking at it. Who's the author of the book?
It is
Thomas Hardy?
Henry James.
Henry James, even better. I don't get those guys mixed up, but I flip their names a lot. I don't mean to do that.
Yep.
Henry James is a really, really good writer. And if this sort of story appeals to you, then you should read all of his stuff. And anytime they make a movie out of his works, it's almost always good. Washington Square, there's a whole list of them that all came out at the same time. But the best one, without question, is The Wings of the Dove. It's such a strong film. Yep. I love it. I watched it. There's no Blu-ray of it. I don't know where you could stream it. It was Miramax, and their catalog has been scattered to the wind. So who's in charge of it, and who, you know what I mean? Disney's in charge of some of it. Lionsgate's in charge of some of it. Some of it's with the now defunct Weinstein Company / Anchor Bay, whatever. It's a hard movie to pin down, but
yep, nominated for a bunch of awards. It won some BAFTAs.
But it's hard. It's not a Jane Austen story. It's
Henry James writes. Those are complex stories that he's writing.
Right, they're morality tales, but they're not just like they're not designed to teach you a lesson. They're designed to illuminate the emotional snares that lie in wait for all of us out there in our hearts. And he presents some of the stuff like it's, sometimes your decisions are avoidable and sometimes they're inevitable and you still have to suffer for them. I think that of the films I've seen of his, because I'm not a super good reader, but that's the best one. That's my favorite. So
yeah, it's and Ian, I'm assuming is how we're going to pronounce that softly. The director, who
he's a really solid director.
Yeah, but before this, he had done Backbeat and Hackers. So it's like these two, and then
Backbeat to Wings of the Dove is, you can draw a line there.
That's a better line, but then Hackers in there.
Backbeat was considered he arrived on the scene. He's a new thing. And so Hackers, he was recruited to do that. And then
that makes sense.
Hackers was a decent unproduced script at the time. And the studio just destroyed it. They just turned it into something it wasn't. That's not Ian's fault. I call him Ian because that's the closest name to how his name is spelled. But he did a really neat gothic horror movie called Skeleton Key with a terrible Kate Hudson, and it's still good. That tells you how good he is. Yeah. All his films.
Ooh, K-Pax. He gave us K-Pax.
Yeah, K-Pax, not so good. But K-Pax is really the script.
Not everything can be perfect. No one has a perfect.
We can agree that K-Pax is directed as good as you could have directed those guys in K-Pax.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
It's not the directing that's the problem. It's a bit of a problem on the page, which the director can take some of the blame for, but it's really mixing these sort of most obvious, annoying, big personalities with obvious and annoying material. And the fact that you get something that is relatively crowd pleasing, which it was, but obvious and annoying is not surprising.
Yeah. All right. So, I got really nothing. I watched the documentary series, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, based on Michelle McNamara's, book about about her quest to find the Golden State Killer.
That's getting a lot of laudits.
It was really terrific. Because it was like her book, it chronicled the search for the Golden State Killer and the horrible crimes this guy perpetrated, but Michelle McNamara infuses herself and her search and how her own obsession with this becomes part of the story. How he affects her just in his the fact that he has seemingly gotten away with it, and she's, her
that
obsession.
that if you want a big Hollywood version of that exact theme, you check out David Fincher's Zodiac. Really,
Yeah. Boy, yeah, man, I like that movie a lot.
It really is about how the inability to answer the question becomes obsession and becomes corrupting.
Yep, and this whole community of citizen detectives. So that was a terrific documentary. So that's probably the big thing. I started watching season 2 of Umbrella Academy since you brought it up. You had mentioned it earlier. Fun comic book.
I'm watching season 1 of Umbrella Academy right now.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's fine.
It's a pretty well done show.
Oh, it's yes.
At the end of every episode, you're like, "It's a lot of effort being put into not a lot of show here," and I'm trying to but like a lot of 10 episode shows, streaming era shows, assume some sort of big ending or some sort of knockout punch is coming.
Yep,
and you have to be a little patient till you get there.
And I
apologize. What do I know?
Yeah.
I'm on episode 5.
I apologize if did I recommend Norseman on Netflix last week? I think I did. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted.
Was that a mistake?
No. Oh gosh, no.
Apologizing for?
No. I apologize
for apologizing cue.
No. Only if I mentioned it again. But I couldn't remember. Did I finish it a week and a half ago or just a week ago?
You can't remember what you talked about on the show last week?
Good gracious, no.
You don't remember telling the Tom Hanks Rita Wilson story on the show?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't. Hey, no, I mean,
I feel like every one of these moments is precious and to be treasured forever. And I remember every detail of it. And I'm a little taken aback that you.
I don't disagree.
What we did last week.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, so much of my gray matter has been forcibly taken up with things like Wiggles music and the different names of dinosaurs, and so it's
that's our different realities really all summed up for the listening audience. You got any questions for me?
Yes, I do. Hit that sounder, Ryan, and the B-Segs.
In the Zoom era of the show, you really can't just say "hit that sounder."
That's true. You're absolutely right.
So you got the best you could there.
That's all right. Well, anyway, no, the big question is so the big news, I should say, the big news this week was that Disney has decided to not put Mulan in theaters, and they are going to test out people who are subscribers to Disney Plus will be able to pay an additional $30 and be able to see Mulan. And that is how they're going to roll out the live action Mulan that they have filmed. And I wanted your thoughts on that as to whether you think, is this going to be a litmus test for the future of going to cinemas?
Well, it's a litmus test for the future of not going to cinemas.
Yeah, or I guess of not going to cinemas. Sure.
That's we should have started the show with this. This is much more interesting to the audience than what I think about White Sands or Rene Russo. Because it's this is it. We've been waiting for this. And what you're seeing is everything that we've ever anticipated you would see. People out there in the world who want to see Mulan are absolutely freaking out at that $30 price. You've been giving them great big gobs of free music and free content for nickels, and now you want them to pay $30, which is cheap for going out to a theater and seeing a movie with your family.
Yeah.
Cheap. But which is preposterous, the idea of paying a streaming service for this movie that someday is going to be on the streaming service for nothing is causing quite a bit of backlash. Not to mention, you made this huge Mulan live action remake, and it will never now have a theatrical exhibition of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
So why it shouldn't have been the kind of project it even was. I hate it. I hate everything about this decision. I don't know what to say. I don't go to the theater anymore. Really. I wasn't going to go to the theater to see Mulan. I was going to wait till I could watch it at home on my TV. So it's not like I don't think that's a legitimate way of watching it, but you really want the theaters not to come back to life. Here you go. Just lose your patience and start putting all this crap out. Disney doesn't need the revenue it's going to get from a Mulan streaming release, even a prestige one for this kind of money. It doesn't need the money. So why is it doing it? Does it just want to kill movie theaters forever? Does it just is the reaction to Disney Plus, which has been, like most streaming services, not super great? CBS, Disney Plus, they're not subscribed by tons and tons and tons of people. And Disney Plus, why would it be? It's all just old stuff. There's only a couple of new things on it, and they're neat, but it's not offering you new stuff. It's offering you old nostalgic stuff.
Yeah, it's the selling point of it. I mean, they rolled out. There's quite a bit of newer programming on there, but that's not what they're selling you. You're absolutely right. They're
selling you having the Disney Vault on your shelf, your fingertips.
Yeah, and you put and
that's
not just Disney Vault, and not just Disney
whatever
Vault.
They're selling.
It's Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel. Yeah, it's I mean, I guess my feeling is that that Mulan is their test run to see.
Killed 20th Century Fox. They're killing home disc media. They want to kill the theaters now. They just want to kill everything until all it is.
And if
they're having the power to hold hostage everything that you want to experience from a storytelling standpoint, and I'm sorry, but that is what this is, and it's just another step in that, and it's depressing.
And I mean,
there's nothing innocent or family oriented about Disney Plus. It's a massive corporate scheme to gain back control of all those videos that it sold you over the years, and all that stuff that you had that you used to be able to watch at your own leisure, and now you don't. It wants control back. There's nothing more Disney about that, and is this ever gonna hit? Is it ever going to be able to buy a Blu-ray of Mulan, or is Mulan always going to be a thing you have to spend $30 for?
Well, sure, yeah. I mean,
or is it going to become a normal streaming thing someday?
Well, they've already started to address that a little bit there. Like if you pay the $30, once you pay the $30, you'll have access to Mulan forever as long as you remain a Disney Plus customer.
As long as you don't leave and come back.
Yeah. So it's how long will it be a $30 purchase? And then are they going to tier the purchase down until it eventually becomes part of their part of their regular programming, I guess I should say.
At some point it would have to. It'd be absurd
to
think that
obviously
3 years from now,
3 years
would still have to buy Mulan for $30 just to watch it.
But
I how are the people who did pay $30 going to feel about that? I mean, how value added is it?
Well, I mean, it's the I saw it first, or I saw it right away.
And is Mulan the thing to get people to do that?
That's the thing. But is the Black Widow movie more than that? Because I feel like this is a test run to see if they get some people to do it. Not even if they get a lot of people to do this, but if they get some people to shell out the $30 to see Mulan, I think Disney would absolutely go, oh, well, now this is a viable model. So
what they're looking for isn't people which Disney Plus subscribers do or do not buy Mulan. What they're looking for is how many people subscribe that aren't subscribed just to watch Mulan.
Yes.
And if that is a big success for them, then sure, Black Widow.
Then they'll do that with Black Widow, and
of course. Then if they run through everything they've got in their stores, then when the theaters do reopen 2 years from now or whatever, they'll have nothing to release.
Yeah.
And that's weird because most studios, if they can afford to, are trying to sit on their big films so that they can, Mulan, Disney probably doesn't see that as a big film actually to them.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And this could be telling about the film itself.
Well, because how big a film was Cinderella really? Big enough, but was it was it one of the biggest films of that year? Was the Maleficent sequel one of the biggest films?
Sure.
That this falls into that category. The live action remake of Lion King was one of the biggest films of the year, but
yeah, and Aladdin did all right. Aladdin
sure did
was
surprisingly well.
Yeah.
But this is more like that, but still, it's still lower tier Disney by today's standards when you look at the Pixar films and the Star Wars films and the Marvel films.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Or, so
yeah, that'll be an interesting.
But I don't like it. I don't like anything that blows up the model because I take part in it, but I don't like the streaming model at all.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same as with what I've always said. You're gonna get all this niche entertainment by all these studios and all these little different services that you have to pay, and you're not going to be. You're giving up control of all of it, but maybe you don't mind that. But there's the things that you're taking out, the things that you might trip over by accident, you're taking out,
we're losing that discovery aspect of stumbling across something.
Maybe we'll see if it's better value. If it is ultimately, then really it should have been like this all the time. People have been complaining they've wanted a la carte packages for their cable services forever.
Yeah.
And cable hasn't given it to them because it kind of knows most people only watch 3 or 4 channels. They don't watch 80.
Yeah.
But taking theaters out of the equation, taking channel surfing out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's always asking. Michael, our good pal, is always saying, whenever I come across this, it's like, how do you come across anything? I mean, in my life, my movies are on the shelf and not necessarily in the streaming service, but I don't come across movies by accident ever anymore.
Yeah.
That is not my reality at all. It is all deliberate and on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's choosing stuff from a menu. I don't channel surf anymore.
I will say up until, we cut the cord. We got rid of cable just a couple months ago, and we now stream for all of our programming. And I will say, there were times where I would just sort of flip through the menu and see what's playing on other channels, and All the President's Men.
But that's not coming across something because you're searching a menu.
Oh, okay. Because that to me is, I think, is what Michael means too. Is you have HGTV
Michael
on,
means
and
he turns on the TV and TNT is playing Jaws, whatever he said last week, Jaws 3, cropped with commercials, and Michael still watches it.
Sure.
And he asked that question, and I think that it's a fun question to answer. We've been asking it for decades of each other. But it's not, it's just shows our age. That is not the experience that the last few generations are going to have at all. That the idea of that is going to be
and I will say since we cut the cord, that's those days, that's not what you do anymore. It's you're like, I feel like watching something, and then you go and you search through and see, and you watch it. You like, I'm gonna watch this movie because it's available from the start, and I can start it at my leisure.
Right.
And watch it from the beginning. I'm not catching it, 3/4 of the way through.
But Spotify is killing music.
Yeah.
It's killing it. Every day of Spotify's existence is a bludgeon to the back of the head of all good music everywhere. Streaming films and TV shows and such isn't the same. It's so, don't get me wrong, but it's still, every evolution in it is it's just hard to explain. It doesn't start with an individual wanting to tell a story. It starts with a marketing group wanting to sell a package of something to somebody or to a certain demographic. I mean, that is it.
Yeah. And
it doesn't matter your ticket buying. It doesn't matter your this or that. It only matters the stock prices of the company that controls so the connection between you, the viewer, and a film or television show success is becoming meaningless, and therefore we're losing control of everything in ways that are like extremely tangible, and it's not good. It's not resulting in better entertainment, and it's just getting worse. And so I'm not a fan of any of this. I'm not a Luddite, I choosing things from a menu that you want to watch and stuff, or having access to these shows to watch whenever you want, like all that is heaven for me, because I've spent time tracking down weird shows just a couple years after they existed, trying to find them on videotape so that I can watch them, because maybe they were never even available to me in the first place. So this idea that, well, you just got to pay the money to the people who control the rights, and then you can do whatever you want. Like, that's very appealing. That's not really the issue. The issue is the value that we put on streaming content and how our vote is calculated. All of that is becoming obscure and corporatized in an extremely negative and unartistic way.
Yeah.
And this is another big step in that. Mulan's a big, it's not, I sort of hedged a little, but it is a big movie. It'll be the biggest movie that I'm aware of released to streaming, with a big built-in audience and all that stuff. So it's a big test, and it's not likely to fail, because it just isn't. Because $30, while there's plenty of people freaking, and there always will be, that's a pretty good value for a family night at the movies. It's not bad. It's not good for a own 2 hours of content for 2 years exclusively. That's a bad value. But even in my world, in the disc media world, $30 for a limited release of something you love isn't a tough sell. So I think we'll hear a lot of bitching, but I don't think that money will stand in the way. I think that was calculated very, very carefully. And I think there are enough people trapped at home, desperate to experience something new, that you'll see that gain them a lot of subscribers.
All right. Let's do one more question. One little fluffier question here. All right. Do you have a favorite type of competition movie? Or maybe just choose from these three. Do you like dance competition movies? Because I know you like dancing in a film.
I don't like dance competition.
Singing competition movies?
No.
Sports competition movies?
I suppose I do like sports competition movies, although I don't view them as the competition being the thing that's exciting about them. I like them because of their typically period movies, which I love the details of, the history of, and they are typically biographies, which I also find interesting from a film standpoint.
Sure.
The competition is secondary. To not important at all. That basically, I'm asking you, tell me about your love for the Pitch Perfect movies. They're fine. I don't have anything against the Pitch Perfect movies. They weren't. It seems weird for me to sit here and complain about those. Those weren't made for my pleasure,
Yeah. No.
I'm not the guy that. So people have a lot of fun watching those.
I was hoping to surprise our audience and have you go, Pitch Perfect movies. I never miss them. I love them.
My favorite competition movie is 1979's Scavenger Hunt.
Ooh, I don't know Scavenger Hunt.
Look it up.
I would say mine is probably Mine is probably Midnight Madness.
Scavenger Hunt is the forerunner to Midnight Madness.
Okay.
A few of the same people were involved. Midnight Madness is a great one. But look up Scavenger Hunt and look who's in it. It's fun. It's got Tony Randall in it. And Scatman Carruthers. That's not
Scatman Carruthers.
Yeah. It's like a 70s disaster movie.
1979.
Is a scavenger hunt.
Richard Benjamin, Cloris Leachman, James Coco, Cleavon Little, Scatman Crothers, Roddy McDowell, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Lars.
Yeah.
Willie Ames, Dirk Benedict.
Nice. They play brothers in it.
Richard Mulligan, Tony Randall, Ruth Gordon. Jeez. Yeah. Stephen Furst. Yep, Stephen Furst. I believe he was also in Midnight Madness. Yeah, Vincent Price. Meatloaf.
You got to
Meatloaf.
get Meatloaf and Vincent Price in there.
Meatloaf plays a character. Meatloaf's character name? Scum.
He's pretty scummy. Scavenger Hunt is the story of a rich guy who dies, and all these different factions of his family come to his reading of his will, and he creates this. It all takes place in San Diego, and he creates this scavenger hunt, and whoever gets the most weird on this giant list of stupid crap by a certain point gets the money. And it's a lot like Midnight Madness. I mean, if you get the premise, those two movies to me are peas in a pod. I would watch Scavenger Hunt first because it's more conventional than Midnight Madness, which has a little high conceptness to it. So it's a better lead in, both chronologically and thematically. But those are great, quote, competition movies that I think we can highly recommend because you go ahead and give your pitch about Midnight Madness. So Scavenger Hunt's just wacky, zany.
Yeah, I would guess.
You hear that cast is full of recognizable people, none of whom are exactly stars, but that's fun. A lot of personality on screen, and it's captured. I
would guess Midnight, to say that, you're absolutely right. Midnight Madness would be Scavenger Hunt aimed at teens.
Yeah.
It's got a very, I believe it's Michael J. Fox's first film as the younger brother of our main guy. What's his name from American Werewolf in London?
David
Naughton. David. Yeah.
Is that him?
I believe. Yeah, he's the.
It's not the other guy. It's not Griffin Dunn.
No, it's not Griffin Dunn.
And it's
David Naughton. Yeah. And it's an
Griffin
eccentric.
Dunn's in another Midnight Madness movie called After Hours by Martin Scorsese, which is great, but not a competition.
Sure.
Unless the competition is to avoid the end of the world.
Not so much, no. But yeah, David Naughton. Yeah, and again, Stephen Furst is in it. Classic film nerd from that period, from the 80s, Eddie Deason.
Oh, yeah.
So, 1980. It was actually 1980. So yeah, I mean, it was everything from, early video games to almost, to like that, the cool kids versus the nerds versus very, very silly, very stupid. I remember it being one of the first movies I ever watched when my family got cable with HBO. And it was like, oh my God, Midnight Madness, and watched it like 40 times because it was on all the time.
It's good. It's genuinely good. I mean, it's a goofy,
silly,
stupid, low-budget, silly comedy, but both of these movies are that. But they're good. So that's a good question in that there was no way either of these films were likely to come up on a conventional list.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Next time we have Michael on, we'll talk Midnight Madness because
he loves Midnight Madness.
He loves Midnight Madness.
But
we'll talk
Midnight
Madness.
Check out Scavenger Hunt too, you guys.
Let's. I'll do.
It's not as fun. It's Midnight Madness. It's more like 11:30 a.m. madness.
Noon madness. Yeah.
Tea time madness.
Tea time madness. Yeah.
It's not the same, but it is fun. It is genuinely fun.
Excellent.
In a silly comedies of those era that aren't smut fun.
Yes, that aren't smut.
Because the smutty comedies from that era are the ones we remember, but these are not that. They're pretty.
These are I remember it being really tame. Not even a lot of innuendo jokes and
not even like even Scum doesn't have very many bad words that he says or anything.
And Meatloaf would want to.
Tony Randall only gets thrown down one flight of stairs.
Well, there you go.
That's not too bad. He could survive that.
All right. Okay, so that'll do it for us for this week. Obviously, please reach out to us. You are invited to the movie show with Joel and Ryan. If you want to chat with us, we would love to chat with you. Reach out to us at the movie show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter and Instagram, and Ask Joel and Ryan at gmail.com, and of course our YouTube page. If you are watching this, you are on our YouTube page. if you are listening to this, search for us on YouTube. All right.
Or
we will
just keep listening to us. We're not here to tell you what to do.
We're not here to tell you what you do. We're here to guide you and enrich your lives. We are, remember, your dessert. Listen, we are rich, creamy. We are decadent and delicious.
And now we're leaving.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.